Estás viendo Canal América, televisión dominicana para el mundo.
A Time for True show is sponsored by the Office of Dr. Bernard Fialkoff, a periodontal, dental implant and laser specialist in New York City, for over 40 years. Dr. Fialkoff was honored by the International College of Dentists and Pierre Fauchard, and received the Presidential Lifetime Humanitarian Honor from the White House. Call us at 718-229-3838.
Sometimes life can be so damn hard, you don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart, yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got, but the world takes you down. You just keep moving on. Let your fears.
Welcome back to A Time for True show. I'm your host, Dr. Bernard Fialkoff, and I can't believe we're almost in February. I was wishing you a Happy New Year, and February is a few days away. So I hope you're enjoying the winter. And, you know, this tonight's show is going to be about our families, about our kids. We have so much in this country, in this world, really. Technology, advances, AI, discoveries. And we have so much to be grateful for. And somehow, just like we have internet breakdowns, network failures, computer blackout or virus programs or malware, it seems like that's part of life. That with the good, you get some bad, and maybe that's the whole game of it. I don't know, but you know, we need to know how to solve the bad. And so tonight, we have a very special show with a very special guest who actually has taken a lot of his time to provide a solution to a malady that's affecting not only our country, but the future of our country. And by that I mean our children, our generation. You know, we label the generations all different names, the millenniums, the Generation Z, you can call it X, whatever you want to call it, but they're the future of our country. And so we're talking about drugs, and we're talking about illicit drugs, not antibiotics or something that helps you to heal, but something that addicts you. So let's take a look at this tonight with a very special guest, and we'll put these pictures up on the screen, please, engineer. Mr. Sean Burke, founder and CEO of Changemaker Foundation. There you see him in front of his truck, an author, a speaker, entrepreneur, and philanthropist, a true humanitarian. During the pandemic, he served as the Interim Executive Director of the Frontline COVID-19 Critical Care Alliance, also known as the FLCCC, where he led the organization in the dissemination of effective COVID-19 treatment protocols to doctors and individuals around the entire world. There you see him doing his drug-free world seminars all across the country. In fact, just a few months ago, Mr. Burke traveled some 7,000 miles, which is a few times and more around our country, across 21 states with that very truck you see. All of this in a 6-week period of time, not to take a vacation cross country, but to salvage our families by distributing the drug-free world educational materials to a very important niche of professionals, our educators, our professors, our teachers, our mentors, the people who actually can help our children to know, to learn. Sean has appeared on such programs as the Today Show, the CBS Evening News, Sky News, and he's been quoted by the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, USA Today, the Los Angeles Times, and many others. And there you see him again in front of his truck. He's got a great smile, and we'll bring it up live. So Buddha, if you will, let's bid a warm welcome to Mr. Sean Burke. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Doctor. It's very nice to be here with you. I appreciate you having me on your show.
Well, you know what? In our world, as a doctor, since you led me into that, there's some maladies and infirmities and sicknesses that I see, and there's a lack of antibiotics that actually work. And you, my friend, Mr. Burke, are that new antibiotic. You work, you're very efficacious, and you kill the virus on the spot. So it's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. Let's get right to it. And so our viewers can learn from you because you're doing so much. So it's important to know about you so they can emulate and take the points out of what you're doing with your life. So first, let's start at the beginning. When you were a young guy, young man, how did that shape and get you to decide who you are and where you are today?
Well, I tell you, I was born and raised in the middle of the prairie in South Dakota. And it was in a little town. So I grew up in a kind of an idyllic community along the Missouri River. Growing up with a houseboat, we'd go boating and skiing, and it was really beautiful, and it was wide open spaces. And I really had a feeling that everything was probably okay. Everything seemed to be okay around me. And also, it was interesting because I was born and raised a few blocks from the state capitol building in our little town. And our family happened to know the different people that worked there. It was such a small town. You got to know kind of everybody in government. So as I went to college in San Diego, California, quite a change. And I started realizing as I got older that things weren't really as good as it was out there on the prairie. And so that original foundation I had was that it seemed like things should be better. And also that the government, I had quite a lot of connection to our government and to our country. I really thought we had a great country. And I'll tell you, by the time I was 22 years old, I had traveled around the world. I'd probably been to 13 or 14 countries on a university program where we went on a ship that literally we went to school on an ocean liner as we went around the world. It's called Semester at Sea. And so I was exposed to governments and in fact, I studied world religion, economics, and one other thing as we went around the world. We went to 12 different cultures. So here's this guy from the middle of the prairie in South Dakota going around the world studying, and it changed my life. So that up to age 22, it really, by that time, I had quite a view of the world, and there I was, ready to go.
Wow. But you know what? It's so amazing that's what happened when you were young, and it's almost like life or God was saying, okay, Sean Burke, this is where we're going to get you to go. What an amazing experience when you related to me that I had no idea. Especially when you were young and you don't have any biases yet and you're looking at the world. Wow. Well, that makes total sense to me. It almost really answers, but I want to ask you anyway, even though it may be redundant. How did you decide on a career as a humanitarian philanthropist?
Well, I tell you, in adding to that, during that college period, I interned for a U.S. senator in Washington, D.C. So I saw the inners of D as well. So, I've always been, and I'm an entrepreneur. So I watched my dad. He was a business owner. And I watched him take care of his clients to the way that no one else would take care of, and also the community. He was very interested in making sure that the community was taken care of as well as his clients. So I just grew up understanding that as a business person, I liked business. I thought it'd be fun. But also at the same time, you give back. You do things to make sure the world around you is doing well. So there's kind of a mix, Doctor, actually, of I really have a very strong love for our country. I now at that point, and today I've been to many more countries around the world. I've not seen a system as well as ours. So I have a real love for the United States and what it's done and what the inspiration of freedom that it gave back when we formed our Constitution in 1787 and the amount of freedom that it pushed across the world. So I think the U.S. is an important piece of the world, frankly, but also how each of us, I never really felt that I needed to sit back or should sit back and the government takes care of everything, or someone else is going to do that. I kind of felt like we all needed to chip in. And so that's how I got to this point. It was 7 years ago now. I started my nonprofit. I thought we got to do something. I was doing pretty well in business. I still run my business, but I have this foundation called the Changemaker Foundation, and I named it that specifically because I feel very compelled to do what I can to make positive change in our country, and if not, if broader to the world, but minimally in the U.S. Bring on positive change and also support others creating positive change across our country. So it's just kind of ingrained in me, and to be honest with you, it's a blast. I love doing that. It's actually where I feel the best. It's a little selfish, frankly. I feel the best helping others, and everybody thanks me for it. This is great, and I appreciate that, but it's actually a blast for me.
Absolutely. I really couldn't agree with you more, because even just doing this show, which was originated on the idea of, like you said, of helping the public, of getting out truth on different aspects and themes or sectors of life, because I had seen, like you, that the U.S. is so important, and it seemed like in the last few years, there's been a lot of negativity, a lot of destroying and beating up the country. So I really agree with you, which brings me to my next question, because it has to do with the future of our country. What do you feel that the public and the citizens of the United States need to know about the drug crisis that's facing our country?
Well, that's a great question, and I've done a lot of different things with the foundation and in life, and it's the key to what I'm doing and the success that I feel we're having is finding materials that can be used by others, and this is where the Foundation for a Drug-Free World comes in. They provide free materials, free curriculum, drug education curriculum to educators, to community leaders, to police departments. Those who are interested in turning around and teaching others and helping others, they'll provide it for free, which I find phenomenal. So when I found this, in fact, it was used in my kids' schools, and that's where I saw it as well. So I thought, wait, this is important that they're giving it away free. And then understanding what's going on in our country. When you see all these things spinning around in our country, there are definite causes. And certainly, in my opinion, there's social media causes. So anybody out there that wants to know about that, I would watch what's called The Social Dilemma on Netflix. It actually explains what social media is doing to pull us apart. But there's another key aspect to this is the drugs. The drugs that have been put into our country, since the 60s, really, it's just been driven in to the point now that we have actual state governments, states, legalizing marijuana for broad use. And it's interesting to me that push has been happening, Doctor, but now the studies are coming out showing that, for example, in young men, age, I believe it's 13 to 20, those who are heavy marijuana users are 1 in 4 chance more to get what they label as schizophrenia. So there is some psychosis that is now being shown to be associated with heavy marijuana use, because the marijuana that's being used today is so much more potent than what was being used in the 60s. Too often people come up, older people say, look, I had a little marijuana when I was, back in the Woodstock era. But we're talking, this is 13, 15, 20 times more potent today than it was back then. And in fact, I had someone older come to me and say that they did try marijuana recently and it freaked them out because of what happened when they just had a little bit. Wasn't anything like what they had back in the 60s. So to look at one of the most important things really bringing the country down and, in my opinion, dumbing us down as a country is drugs. And I felt that this program being put forth by the Foundation for a Drug-Free World is called Truth About Drugs, just gives the truth on what these drugs are, and it can get into the hands of educators because they're offering them for free. So I just couldn't pass this up. I felt like we needed to do something about it. And last fall, if you'd like me to tell you more about that, I did. We did something about it.
Well, actually, that leads me to my next question, because at the outset of the show, one of the things I wanted to highlight, because they're such important people and they spend so much time with our future generation, the youth, from kindergarten, pre-kindergarten, up through, even go through college. And those are the professors, the teachers, the counselors, the mentors, the educators. So tell us, yes, absolutely. Tell us about this 7,000-mile trip that you took to bring this Foundation for Drug-Free World program to all the schools across the country, because I really think that's such an important topic to talk about. Please go ahead.
Well, I will. And my wife was a teacher, so I married a teacher. So that's how much I love teachers. So what happened? It was very simple. It was a little over a year ago. A friend I live up in the Seattle area, and a friend was having a booth displaying these materials at a local educator conference. There was health teachers and PE teachers at this conference, and he had a booth and a table, and he was giving it away. And he said, "Why don't you just come down and see what we're doing?" I spent maybe 3 hours watching. I didn't do anything, and I watched these educators come up to the table. And they were so interested in the materials, and he was giving them away. And then some educators, because this gentleman had been doing this in Seattle for about 8 years. So this is his 8th year. So he had educators coming up to the table saying, "Oh, I need a few more, but here is Julie. She's a new teacher in our school, and she needs her set to get into her classroom." I just couldn't believe the amount of interest that was happening from these teachers. So I walked away that day. Didn't really do anything. Just walked away, and I'm the CEO of the Changemaker Foundation. So we're changing. What can we do to make change? I couldn't shake this. So I decided to test it because look, he's been doing that for 8 years. Maybe this was an anomaly. Maybe this was just something that he's done it for so long they know about it. So I got in my car. I found another conference of the same kind of teachers, PE and health teachers, in Fargo, North Dakota, in February. So I decided to drive from Seattle across 4 states to this conference on my own with these materials, set up a table so I could see if it was going to be the same thing that happened over in Seattle. Now, Drug-Free World, Foundation for Drug-Free World, had never been to this conference, ever. They welcomed us with open arms. And in fact, the educators were so happy I was there, and they all signed up for their kit that was going to be shipped to them free from the Foundation of Drug-Free World. So it's like, okay, this actually might have some legs. I decided to set up a tour to test it. This was all a test last year. 9 different conferences in the East and Midwest over a 6-week period in October and November of just last year in 2023. So I set that up. I got a van. You showed that image earlier. I just had somebody design a little stuff for the side. So, because, if I'm going to drive around, I might as well tell them what I'm doing. So, so I flew out, got the van, got the materials, and for over 6 weeks, drove across those 21 states and went to 9 different conferences. Some of the conferences were PE and health teachers. Now, usually health teachers are those who teach drug ed in schools, usually. So they were very interested. But I'll tell you, it's gotten so bad in the school system, especially after the pandemic, that the schools are tapping guidance counselors in the schools to also help with this, to help kids with drugs. So I also attended conferences where school guidance counselors would come together in a state, and we got bombarded. The amount of interest at the tables for this material, and what I learned was fascinating, because I was fairly new to this world. So many teachers said they don't have any other curriculum for drug education. And the curriculum they did run into was from like the 90s and was really outdated. So they were so happy to get something to be able to use in their classroom. Now, I find that astonishing. And I think that someone needs to look into this more. How is it that every school doesn't have really good drug education curriculum to be used with the students? It blows my mind, and it's a massive gap, a massive hole that is missing in the education of our kids. Now, some teachers told me it was because the school's afraid if they teach them about the drugs, that somehow then they'll go out and do the drugs or something. And most teachers thought that was laughable. And I agree that the kids need to know what they're going to confront as they go out into the world, because for sure they're going to run into all this stuff. So
that makes so much sense, John, because, why don't we drink water that's on the street after a thunderstorm and drink water out of the gutter? Because we know instinctively and by being taught and just common knowledge throughout the world that water is polluted. It has dirt, has God knows what kind of toxic substances in it. So we don't do it. So what you're saying to me, I don't think takes any rocket science. I think you're totally right. And those teachers were totally right that, that we need education. And this program that you're talking about is fantastic. The other thing that I think is very interesting as you were talking is that because I've seen that the science and the scientific results on drugs is that really they're not good for you. And one of the questions I've asked myself, and I wanted to ask you, is like, so how are they, I don't know what basis they're legalizing it on. So I was going to ask you, what basis do you think that they're legalizing these drugs on? Because when I was in high school, if you went anywhere near them, you would be automatically looked at, censored, educated, or a cloud would go up above you, a flag would go up above you. And now I've even heard of some states legalizing LSD. Well, tell us, what do you think is going on?
Well, first of all, there is some vested interests out there somewhere that think that this is a good idea. I will tell you that if I'm an enemy of the United States of America, what I would do is make sure all of these types of drugs get legalized so that the population of the country that eventually I want to go down and I want to be more powerful or take over actually is asleep or crazy. Because now listen, that LSD one you're talking about, I not very long ago, we all saw a news article from Alaska Airlines where a pilot that was off duty jumped in a jump seat inside the cabin. You remember that? And he was going to, he was shutting down, he pulled the things to shut the engines down or something. Now, he had been up for 40 hours straight on a mushroom that, I guess that's LSD, LSD high. And that's just incredible that they're legalizing. So what do I think is causing it? And also for marijuana, they have convinced there are vested interests that are spending a lot of money to get these referendums pushed through in these states. And I'm not sure if they're setting themselves up to make billions off of selling, quote unquote, these legal drugs. But they're not giving the statistics. I have spoken to federal agents. One gentleman centered out of Colorado. Colorado was one of the early ones with marijuana legalization. He was saying that the amount of car crashes, the amount of emergency room visits, and other problems that happen because of the legalized marijuana is not being reported by the media. So I believe that there's money here to be involved. Someone's making money off of this. That's usually what I trace is where's the money? And number two, who doesn't like us? Because I can't believe putting our country more to sleep is the right solution, and who benefits from that? And so I back it up to who's going to benefit from that is somebody who's trying to do us in. Now, I also will tell you this, doctor, I've had people say to me, yeah, well, alcohol isn't, what about alcohol? Now, I will tell you, you don't legalize marijuana because we have legal alcohol. As far as I'm concerned, if you want to start making alcohol illegal, it's okay, because we'd save a ton of people dying from DUIs and the other problems out there with alcohol. Just because alcohol is legal doesn't make it perfect, and it doesn't make it awesome. But so let's not start legalizing everything else, because that's a fallacy. That's a bad way of looking at it.
That's a bad premise. You're totally right. We're coming to the end of the show, and always when it's a great show, the time flies. But I want to ask you, if you could quickly, what do you feel educators should say and do across the country, and what steps can they take after watching this show?
Well, I tell you what, the best thing, if you're watching this show and you're an educator and you want one of these kits, they have a full classroom curriculum with lesson plans. That this is the foundation for a drug-free world. They have it, and also they have materials for 21st students in their box, this kit. So you'd go to drugfreeworld.org, look on the website where you can order as an educator kit, put in the information, and they'll ship it to you for free. So go there now. It's available. This is an offer. I've had teachers at these conferences. I have one gal, her mouth literally just dropped open. She could not believe, because it's so rare for educators to get anything free. This is offering a free curriculum and materials to all educators. And even if you're in law enforcement and that kind of thing, go to drugfreeworld.org and order your kit. It's going to come. It's going to be free. There's no shipping. There's no catch. It's there for you to use.
Sounds like a great solution. We have maybe about 30 seconds left on the show. What final comment do you want to give those people out there and how to preserve our country and help against this drug problem?
Well, in this case, I believe that drugs is doing our country in, and this is a solution. Look, you got to do something. Don't sit back and just go into apathy on this. There are things that can be done. This is one thing that can be done. If you know an educator that you think would like this material, go to drugfreeworld.org and order some stuff and give it to them. But if we start educating our youth, imagine for the next 10 years that every kid in the U.S. is taught about the dangers of drugs, how different our country would be. That's what I'm trying to do.
Well, you know what? I think that's an excellent solution. And I want to thank you, number one, for being on the show. And for those of you watching, you know what? I think he set a great example. He took some time from his life. He went. He got this material out, safeguarding our kids. You know, I've met some parents recently, unfortunately, that had either in their family or very close in, they lost one of their children. And they had no idea that it was happening. A statistic is a number. When it hits you personally, it's something that's very difficult to ever overcome. Let's not have that happen. Let's do on a positive side. Let's educate. Let's follow Mr. Sean Burke's lead. Let's get out there. Let's help each other. Let's save this great country and in turn the world. Yeah. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you on the next episode of A Time for Truth show. Good night.
This show was sponsored by A Time for Truth Foundation Incorporated as a community service.
Sometimes life can be so damn hard. You don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart. Yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got, but the world takes you down. You just keep belong at your feet.